Rikki Jay, comedian, not the magician, as there's a conjuring Rikki Jay in America. But I'm talking to the British funny man who has toured with Looney Tunes live on stage, hung out in Los Angeles in the 90s, has had TV contracts, panto contracts, summer seasons, holiday parks, cruises around the world and back, work in pantomimes with legends such as Biggins and Count Arthur Strong, and he's carved a career out as a successful stand-up comedian known and respected highly in our industry. Gary Bushell says of Rikki Jay, Rikki is an absolute professional, clean, polished, reliable and funny. In the late 1990s, I auditioned for a children's BBC presenter job, and it's a story I've never told before. So you get to hear it here first, and I can't hide it because Rikki Jay was there to see me crumble. We all have our ups and downs, and we're happy to talk about them, all on Eyes and Teeth. Dressing room banter on Funny for Money. And welcome to Eyes and Teeth, Season 7, Rikki Jay.
It's nice to be here.
Hello, where are you? You're at home, yeah?
I am at home. It's nice to be. Well, it's not nice to be. I've been here for a year now. I'd like to go somewhere else, to be honest.
Madness, isn't it, mate? But I want to get to know you. I want to get to know Rikki more than I have, okay? Because we've crossed paths a few times. I don't even know if we've worked together. I think it's mainly been social.
Yeah, I think last time I worked with you, I think your daughter had just been about 9 years ago. We did Richard Griffin and Hayley James.
Of course, Sensation.
At the Harlow Playhouse.
Yes.
And it seemed to recall that your daughter had just been born then, I think.
Yes, I think you're right. No, I think she was just born, so that was October. And I think Sensation was at the end of that month, I believe. So, oh, wow.
Yes.
That was probably my next gig back as a dad, actually. So I was probably beaming at that time.
Yeah, you were. You had your photograph out on the dressing room table. He was proud as punch. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So forgive me, we have worked together. I just recall seeing you in getting on ships, in TV studios. But where did Rikki Jay find the funny? Where did you first think, oh, that's funny? You got a laugh, and then you carried on.
I don't know really. It was more of an accident than anything else. I started off. My mother, when I was a kid, was a magician's assistant, a guy called Lem Blease. Only part-time, just in an amateur sort of way.
Wow.
And what it was my dad had left when I was a kid, so my mum had to bring my brother and myself up, and to earn some extra money, to earn an extra £5 a week, she used to get sawn in half and by this amateur magician. And so at the age of about 11 or 12, I got interested in juggling and magic and things like that. And I started doing some shows for Lem Blease. Funny enough, there was 3 kids that lived in the same town, and we all started as jugglers and magicians. We're all like in our early teens, and from the 3 of us, we all went on to be professional entertainers. It was Dane Cordine, Stephen Garcia, as he's known now, and myself, and we were all at the age of 12 or 13 standing outside a theatre, the Westcliff Theatre in Clacton-on-Sea, doing Lem Blease's magic show.
Wow.
And
I know all those guys from Fred Olsen. I know those, Dane and Stephen, lovely guys as well.
Yeah, so I started there, and then we were in the afternoon, and the main show in the evening was the Cascade Review. Andrew Robley was in that.
Of course.
As well, so we first met him then, and Ruthie Henshaw was one of the dancers.
Blimey.
And Kenny Cantor was the comedian in it, and I loved Kenny. He was such a lovely guy, and I often asked, and so I used to watch Kenny, and I loved his show, and it got me interested in comedy. But he told me, he said, stick to magic. He said, stick to magic and juggling. And his reasoning behind it, I can never forget, he said, the thing with comedy, he said, when it's going well, he said, it's better than any drug in the world. He said, but when it's not, it's worse than the lot of them. So just stick to juggling and whatever.
Really?
So I kind of did. And I did this sort of comedy magic act and juggling act for a few years. And I was over in Jersey. And I think deep down, I wanted to be a comic, but I didn't really have the courage to do it.
Right.
And by that time, I was really loving like the likes of Freddie Starr and Bob Monkhouse, all of those great comics back in the 80s.
Yes. Wow.
And 90s.
Great inspirations.
I was in Jersey, and I was doing this comedy magic act, and one Sunday afternoon, I I was putting little bits of magic in it, but still enjoying. Little bits of comedy in it, but still mainly magic. And I had an accident in an afternoon on a Sunday, and I cut my knuckles open on a glass.
Oh.
And I had to have stitches on it, and I was working that night, and it was a pickup, and it was 50 quid. It was a lot of money, and I wanted to do it, so I couldn't bend my hands, I couldn't do any magic or juggle, so I went on and told jokes, and I enjoyed it so much that I never went back to doing magic. So it was a complete accident.
Revolution.
That it came
at
about.
that time. Oh, that's amazing. So yeah, an accident got you into that. It's strange, as some people talk about, I got into this by accident, but you literally did, didn't you? Yeah, that what got you into it. So when you were doing the comedy magic, because at that time you had Wayne Dobson and Tommy Cooper, so it was, were they kind of inspirations for the comedy magic?
Yeah, but both of them were inspirations. Probably for Tommy Cooper, I've always admired and found incredibly funny. And of course, Wayne Dobson at that time became this really modern, compared to what we were used to watching at the time. Wayne Dobson came along with this real modern approach, and he was a huge inspiration in what to aspire to be like. Tommy Cooper, more of just, I can remember as a kid, even back to doing it, just finding him so funny. And now, of course, looking back on Tommy Cooper, as we do, and look at these stuff, we just admire how he was so ahead of his time.
Yeah.
But yeah, both of them were big inspiration, as was Paul Daniels, of course, because Paul Daniels was incredibly funny as well.
He was naturally funny as well, Paul. So he's a master, wasn't he? But I see, like, the first experience of celebrity with you. I read it in the newspaper online, and it's about your birthday in a bar, and someone come up to you and said, "Are you Rikki Jay?" And you went, "Yes, I am." And you said, "Well, get out, you're underage."
Yeah, that was great. I tell you who was with me. I was with Phil Butler.
Yeah, you were. The Magic City Saturday Morning Club.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Magic City, and it was the Royal Hotel, and I'd just been on the front page of the local newspaper for doing something magic or whatever, and I can remember we were sitting at a fruit machine, both of us, and this lady, she said, "Are you Rikki Jay?" I went, "Yes, I am." She said, "You're that magician, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "You're underage. Get out."
And you had your Sharpie ready to sign a paper.
Exactly.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh dear, I've forgotten all about that. But yeah,
Well, Phil Butler hadn't. He told me to mention it. So.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you were kind of not a double act, but you've done a lot together in the magic world, you and Phil, and I didn't know that about you both.
Yeah, we did. From doing the Westcliff Theatre and everything else, there was an amusement arcade around the corner from the Westcliff Theatre in Clacton,
right?
Owned by Billy Peake.
Okay.
And they started this new. It was before soft play was sort of as popular as it is now, and it was this brand new sort of emporium called Magic City, and it had a foam rabbit that you used to dress up in, and I used to stand outside there juggling and doing tricks, and there was a little stage at the back, and there were 3 magic shows a day that kids used to come and watch. Andy Leach used to do it, and Phil Butler got a job there, and so Phil and I did 2 or 3 summer seasons together, and then during out of season it wasn't so popular, so they kept only two people on that would do. Right. They used to have kids parties and things like that, and they kept Phil and myself on.
Oh, brilliant. I actually done Clacton last Christmas 2020, and so it was only for a week, but the Westcliff Theatre it's a good old-fashioned seaside resort still, isn't it, Clacton?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's back in the day. If you go back to the 60s and the 70s, there was probably, I don't know, half a dozen shows running in the summer season there all the time. There was a Butlins there. There was the Ocean Theatre at the end of the pier.
Blimey.
The Westcliff, the Princess Theatre. They were all. But now, of course, like most of these seaside resorts, it's scaled down.
Yeah, shame.
But no, it's a lovely. I've got loads of happy memories there of the Westcliff Theatre and the Princess Theatre as well. My first ever gig was the Princess Theatre, but their first summer season was the Westcliff Theatre.
Where did you do your groundwork? Was it social clubs or holiday parks, or when did you get your act?
From there, from Jersey, then I came back. And from there, I probably did mainly. We did quite a few 10-day runs, the North East and Wales and Scotland, but the majority of the work was in the holiday camps to begin with. If you're going back to the early 90s and that, it would have been the Haven and then Pontins and
Sure. Yeah, that's kind of where I got my groundwork, and it was quite hard work, but it was fun when it's where you got to meet your mates, really, that you remember even today. It's where we all bumped into each other, on the Isle of Wight ferry and all that.
It's where you got to like gangsters' festivities, isn't it?
Yeah, we grew up on gangsters. We should be bigger than we are, actually, but not in a famous stature way, but I mean sort of weight wise.
Eyes and Teeth.
When was it when you had this break on television, really? Because you, in the 90s, you were on the big talent show. Was that 96?
Yeah, that was. I think it was. That didn't come about as a break, actually, because I kind of signed up for it, and then Channel 5 had happened before that, and I'd started doing a bit on Channel 5. But the big talent show comes up because I'd written Paul Zerdin's material for the year before, and he'd won it the year before.
96,
so,
yeah.
Or a lot of the material. So I'd got to know the show then.
Okay, brilliant.
And he did rather well on it, and I didn't do so well. So I'm obviously better at writing it than I am delivering it.
I need you to write for me for BGT, actually. I could have done with winning that one. So.
It was a great thing, that big talent show with Jonathan Ross. He was a really nice guy. I'll never forget, when some people have done some really nice things to him, that was beyond the call of duty.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Ross, well, I finished one of the segments of the show. I'm not sure which segment it was. And anyhow, he said, and then at this point, we'll stand here, you'll shake our hands, we'll pretend to speak, and it'll go into the advert credits.
Okay.
So we did it in rehearsals, and we said, and that's what happened. So it's great. And then, during the recording, did the show, and I really enjoyed it. A good gig, and it went into the adverts, and where we were pretending to speak, and he shook my hands and he went, "That was great, Ricky, thanks very much." He went, "In 10 years' time, will you have me on your show?" And I thought it was a really nice thing to say.
That's a compliment, isn't it?
And I apologise now that I've never had one to have him on.
He's still waiting. He's still waiting.
He's doing all right without it.
He should have you back on, shouldn't he? His show's still going. And the big talent show, I done it in 97, and it only ran for 2 years, didn't it? So it's a shame it didn't go any further, but I think he then moved to another channel, didn't he? Go to BBC or something?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah, it was a shame, though. It was a good, but they've evolved, haven't they? They've
yes.
To BGT and to Pop Idol and The Voice and everything else, and they're the talent show. They're the opportunity knocks and the new faces of today.
But a lot of really great acts come out of that. Just trying to... Gina Yashmir, Omid Dajili was on it as the short, fat kebab owner's son. Ian Royce. There were some great comics on the show.
Ian Royce was on it, yeah. Stephen
Mulhern, yeah.
He was on it.
Andy Ford.
Yeah, there was some great people on it. Francine Lewis. Did Francine Lewis do it?
Francine Lewis did it as well, yeah.
I think she did, didn't she? Yeah.
Then we've all... I think you're the only one out of us that haven't done Britain's Got Talent. I'm still waiting to see you. It's been quite favourable with comics, hasn't it, in the last maybe 2 years? I mean, they hated magicians, and then magicians probably took over for about 5 years. And then they let a ventriloquist in once, but they really kind of went into the comedy. They really championed comedians. But it's a risk, isn't it?
They've always wanted comedy to do it, haven't they? They've always been very keen to get comics on, and I think a lot of people have shied away from it.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, it's always been, I've always thought that it's a difficult gig for a comic, in the fact that they're interviewing you before you get into your routine.
Yeah.
So you've really got to speak as yourself before your character comes up as a comment, and
it ruins your persona, I guess, doesn't it? It doesn't, because you need to flow into that material, and you're given two sides of yourself. And do you think that ruins the outlook in the end?
I'm not sure if it ruins it. I just think it's something that doesn't suit everybody, I don't think. And I've always thought that I'm not very sure it would suit me to sort of talk sensibly or whatever with the panel when they're asking you questions. Sure. And everything else, and then to be trying to do the sort of comedy that I do. But I think some people can do it, rather well. I think it helps if you're a ventriloquist or a magician or something like that, where you can speak to the camera and then do something completely different when you get into your own spot.
It's just something visual that you could go into. You should have got some of your magic out.
Yeah.
A little bit of that. You performed on the jaywalking thing. Can you talk me through the jaywalking?
Yeah, that came about with Channel 5, with Five's company when it first started. And I was really lucky to get on that, to land that. A few years prior to Channel 5 starting, there was, do you remember a programme, I think Tyne Tees used to do it, called Chain Letters?
Yes, yeah. That was Andrew O'Connor, wasn't it? Was he on that?
And I think he did it, and then Ted Robbins did it as well for a while.
Okay.
And when Ted Robbins finished his stint of it, they were looking for a new presenter. And at the time, the manager I was with was looking after Peter Simon, who was doing Run the Risk at the time, and they were interested in him, but he couldn't have time to do it. So anyhow, they managed to blag, and I was new into the business. I was very young, so they managed to blag me an audition. And I went up to Newcastle and I auditioned, and I wasn't really ready for it, and there wasn't any way that I'd probably get the gig. But the executive producer was a guy called John May, and he really liked me, and he was very nice and said, look, you're not quite ready for it yet, but I think you're good, and I really like you. And then he, for quite a while afterwards, every 2 or 3 years, every 2 or 3 months, he'd phone the office and speak to Ron and just say, how's Rikki doing and everything else. And he kept my video of my audition, and every so often he'd sort of let some other people have a look at it and see if they were interested in using a young comic.
That's good of him.
Yeah, it was really nice.
It kept you in mind.
Anyhow, it just so happens that 2 or 3 years later, Channel 5 was just starting, and their flagship program, which was Five's company, he became the one of the producers and the bookers on. So,
brilliant.
Yeah, and by that time, I'd obviously matured a little bit more. So he got us in to do the pilot, and from that, we did a year there, did the entire thing. And of course, they were huge. The people on there were, once again, Francine Lewis was doing it, but John Coleshaw, Nick Knowles, Esther McVeigh,
Steve Allen.
Yeah, Steve
LBC
Allen.
Radio,
Out
yeah.
of all those, I'm the only person I've never heard of since. There were some really great guys on there, and that was a really good learning curve, because it was live television, and it went out. And it was regular live television. I haven't met the viewer yet, but it was regular live television.
I think it must have been me. But you know what? It was a fun show, wasn't it? I was on it about 3 times as a guest, and I'd done a talent show on there called, I still got the trophy, actually. I won a talent show because I think they felt sorry for me on the Big Talent Show. I didn't get anywhere. So I was poached to do Five's company. It was, what did they call it? It was a talent show. And then I think Paul Young, Wherever I Lay My Hat, he was a judge.
Yeah.
Rex Roper, an old water rat, variety artist, he was on it. So they were judging my act, sort of thing. And it was, Five's company. It was there was like 5 presenters, obviously, for the title.
Right. Well, it was like a pool. There was a pool of about 10 presenters.
Yes.
Only ever 5. Paul Roseberry was another one. Only ever 5 were on at one time. And then, of course, Lionel Blair came on for a while. He did it for about the last sort of half year.
Okay.
He was great. John Barrowman was on it for a while. He was a presenter to begin with, and then they would swap us all around and put us in at different times and what have you. But
they really loved you on there. You were there, like their Michael Barrymore. You come on and just create chaos on the set, wouldn't you? And there's some lovely things on YouTube with you. I remember the very last episode, and they all get their own back on you, because I think you covered Steve Allen once in some silly string. But they.
It was fun. Funny enough, though, it was a good lesson that you learned there. I learned there because near the end of Five's company, I think it finished in like the January or February or something like that. But near the end of it, it used to break at 3:00 in the afternoon for the news, and I would always go over to this particular camera 1 or whatever was on the left, and the makeup would come on and freshen up a bit of makeup and everything else. And I like to have a little chat with the audience, because it had a live audience, and I like to have a little chat in the break. And this one time I went, it broke to the news or whatever. I went over to my new point. There was a different cameraman, and he was a deaf, and he was just there, and he was just queuing up the next shot or whatever, and he wasn't taking any notice, and I was standing to the left and having a little chat with the audience and having my makeup done. And the producer that came for the day, she came running out and she went, I really love that bit, Rikki. That's great. They went, you really are Channel 5's flavour of the month at the moment. And then she went away, and this cameraman he didn't didn't even take his eyes off the camera and queuing up the shot. And he just sort of leant over to me, didn't even look at me. And he went, "Do you know what the worst thing about being flavour of the month is?" And I went, "No." He went, "At best, you've got 30 days left."
That's sad.
And he was absolutely true, because I think about 30 days to the day, they axed the show.
Oh, you're kidding. He was right.
Yeah.
Wow, he must have been around the business so much that he knew what that meant.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. But I've always remembered that and thought, you know, do you want to be flavour of the month? Do you want to be? Because if you are, then there's only one way to go, really. And if you just stay working and stay doing your job, then you don't have to worry so much.
Yeah, definitely. But it's nice to be flavour of the month rather than not be flavour of the month at any time in your life. You know, you can have your 15 minutes of fame, as they say. But I mean, we spread it out, didn't we? Us sort of constant performers, where we go and do summer seasons and then pantomimes, cruise ships, a bit of television here and there. You dip in and out of stuff, and your career is kind of, you know, it's on an even keel that you're happy with, you know. I mean, you need to be happy in life and your family life, and you're okay just to breeze along. That's what I'm trying to say, I think, because I'm happy just breezing along, you know. And I had my 15 minutes, it was lovely, but I love doing what I do. I don't want to be mega famous. I think it's an awful place to be, you know. You look at celebrity these days, I'm happy, you know, to be breezing.
Exactly, yeah. And it's also, it's good to do other things, but somebody else, at the end of the career, you want to look back to a body of work, and you want to look back and go, I learned about this, and I learned about this, and I tried this. And do you remember when you had to do work this sort of way on the cruises, but then you had to work this sort of way?
Yeah, we're always learning.
You don't want to sit back and say, I've been a one-trick pony. And
yeah, or I wish I'd tried that. But you know, try everything. Try and do what you can.
Continuity.
I'm not very good in auditions, and I've tried a few auditions. I hate auditions, but there's one audition that sticks out in my mind. I think it was around 98, and it was for the BBC children's television presenter job I went for. And you were there in the waiting room with Ron Martin, I believe he was your manager.
Yeah.
And we had to do this pirate sketch. It was me and you in the studio with like two producers, a director, and we had to read this script. And because it was pirates, I just naturally went, "Oh, my name's Dave." You know, I had to do the pirate thing. And do you remember the producer? He went, "No, Steve, can you? No, Ricky's the pirate, and you're just one of his mates, but you haven't got that accent. You don't do that accent." And then I think I went back into the script. I went, "Ooh, and I just done it quieter." I couldn't grasp.
No, I remember that. It was for a program called The Friday Zone.
Right. Okay. Yes.
And once again, I think I'd got into that by default, because Peter Simons was one of the presenters, I think, that ended up doing it, and Ron would have gone, "Oh, do you want to take a look at this young guy as well?" And I can remember that very sketch. It was a part, because they gave us the script, and if I remember rightly, they gave us like half an hour or whatever, and said, "Oh, look over that," and then come back in and see what you can do. And I went into the cafe with Ron, and I think Richard Wilson was in there, because he was probably filming One Foot in the Grave or something like that.
Wow.
At the time. And I can remember saying to him, "What does a pirate sound like?" And he went, to be honest, he said, "A pirate sounds like anybody else, but has probably got an ear in him." But yeah, no, I didn't get a gig, but I did end up writing on it. I think was it who was the producer at the time? But anyhow, they ended up saying, "Would you come in and write on it instead?" So I did go in and write on it a few times.
So use your talent in another way. You know who got the job? Dominic Wood of Dick and Dom got the job, didn't he?
That's right, yeah. Dominic Wood.
They signed up two people.
But yeah. But I know I did end up going in and writing on it.
Oh, well done,
and
mate.
I think my first check from the BBC came through, and it was like 69 pence or something like that for my effort.
For royalty, was it? Oh, blimey. Is that per gag?
Yeah.
Eyes Teeth.
What is your writing process, Rikki? How do you just sit down and write gags when someone says, "I need 10 gags on cheese," and you sit down and write, or how do you come up with your material? Because you've written for so many different names.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I find it easier with other people than I do
Bouncing
myself.
off someone.
Yeah, so I'm not really somebody that can sit down and there's some great writers out there that can sit down with a newspaper in the morning or something like and come up with 100, and they're really good. And I'm not really, I don't have that talent. I wish I did have that talent, but I don't. I work better if I sit with somebody for a couple of hours or whatever and bounce off them or see what they're doing and try and inject bits. And really, I've always worked better, even when writing scripts for pantomime and people. I've always worked better working with somebody else to be able to.
Yeah. I'm totally the same, actually. I remember doing the summer season in Cromer with Paul Adams, and sitting down and writing something on my own before I got to rehearsal was kind of tricky. We sat down and we had like 5 days to rehearse and write 2 comedy sketches, and we nailed it, and it was really good fun. We had more fun, I think, in rehearsal week than we did. Writing a comedy routine is lovely, isn't it? When you're bouncing off a mate
it's great.
And someone else is funny. It's nice to put that together and then see it on the stage. The final edit. It's so nice to come up with something.
Yeah, no, that certainly is. For a long time, I wrote with Richard Gauntlet at Norwich, and we used to write the panto there together. And that was always nice that you'd sit down in February or March with Richard, and we'd be bashing away together, and then work. When our schedules gave us time to get a night or two together, we'd catch up, and then to watch on opening night and see it all come and see other people, how it was presented by other people is always, it's great. That process is always rewarding.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Richard Gauntlet, he's still over in Norwich, isn't he, at the Theatre Royal? And
I thought I did 8 years there, and I thought that's got to be a record. I think he's been there about 28 years, I think, or something now. He is the panto in Norwich.
Yeah, they love him there. He plays a day. You've worked with him at least 3 times, haven't you? How many times did you work with him there?
I think I worked 4 or 5 times. I first got the gig with when Desmond Barrett was directing it, and I went in the first year there in Aladdin. And then the following year, I started writing it with Desmond Barrett, and I think I did 2 or 3 with Desmond Barrett, 3 or 4 with Richard Gauntlet afterwards.
Bouncing off Richard must have been good fun as well, and I've been in his company.
He's brilliant, Richard. He's like an encyclopedia of of comedy or entertainment.
Yeah,
talented man. Hate him.
Oh, conversational.
You've worked with quite a few nice names as well, like Paul Shane from Heidi High, so he must have been nice to work with, and Faith Brown as well.
Yeah, they were in the same show, actually.
Yeah.
Paul Shane and Faith Brown. Yeah, no, Paul was lovely to work with, actually. He was such a gentle guy. It was such a shame. It was only a couple of years after that he passed away, but he was a lovely chap. Brian Hippard as well. He was great. Derek Griffiths in Norwich. It was fantastic. He's the only time. A lot of the time when you write things and you get to the read through, and because you've got a mental picture in your head on how you want it to sound or what it's going to be like,
sure.
When an actor starts to do it, sometimes it's a bit disappointing because it's not, because obviously they've got their own take on it and their own personality, and sometimes it's not quite what you'd dreamt up, and it can be a bit disappointing.
Right.
I can remember we wrote Derek Griffiths in as Hook, and I can remember sitting just in the read through and him starting and saying to Richard Gauntlet, I never thought it could be that good. The guy was just a genius. I never thought it could be that good.
So that's amazing that he really brought your routine to life. And that was the read through. That's nice when it starts to come together, though, isn't it? And you start seeing the production actually happen and think, oh my God, this is better than I expected. But that's a lovely outcome.
Yeah, no, definitely no. But he was incredible. I think that was my last year there, so that was great to work with him on the last year there.
Nice to end on. Well, I've seen that. I've started to listen to a radio show and a TV show as well, because this guy is doing his own stuff, and I see that you work with him in panto. You must have some stories about working with Count Arthur Strong. He's such a great character.
Oh, Steve Delaney. Steve's lovely. I was in Richmond with Steve and Christopher Biggins.
Wow.
And he's just absolutely lovely, and it's when he comes into, he's nothing like the character, but he's just such a good. Do you know, we did that? I think that was 3 or 4 years ago. and it was a five or 6 week run. I can't remember, and we sat in Christopher Biggin's dressing room every interval having tea and cakes. We must have put on about 14 stone, and but we didn't miss one interval in that whole time. We sat there every time. He was just a lovely guy, and a big fan of all types of comedy. Sometimes you meet people that are only really, they're only interested in a particular field that they work in. But
sure.
Steve's not. He's just a fan of any sort of comedy.
His style is so relaxed, isn't it? And I totally get him, and I just think the character is genius. It's such a lovely style.
Brilliant in panto. It takes. I think he played the Emperor, so it takes a role that sometimes can just be an also-ran role, and then when you put a character like that in it to bring out all of the traits of Count Arthur Strong, it just puts a whole new dimension into a role you wouldn't normally build up that much.
The last panto I ever saw was actually not last Christmas before, 2019, and you were back with Biggins again, and the young Max Fulham, a great young ventriloquist.
Yeah, he's great, Max. He really is. I wouldn't mind 10% of his future.
Yeah, I think Hillary's got that.
Yeah, he is. He's a great young vent, and he's got a head on his shoulders that's far above his years, and he's got great timing. Once again, far above his year. He's got the whole package, really. I saw him recently on Crackerjack. He did a second appearance on Crackerjack.
Yeah, didn't he do well? Brilliant.
And that was interesting to watch as well, because the routine he did on that was a routine he actually did in the panto. So it was, I guess, maybe 12 months after I'd first seen it, and to see how he's tweaked it and added bits to it. And that's really interesting to see, especially when you think that he probably hasn't worked very much in between panto and crackerjack, because none of us have. So to have been able to add so much to it and tweak it without going out and doing it
with no audience,
7 times a week is really impressive. No, I think he's got a fantastic future ahead of him.
To actually have a nice TV spot and not being able to go out there, because you would, wouldn't you? For 2 weeks, you go and practice that material with an audience.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
And it's so sad. But I guess when he done the show, there was no audience on the show either. So it's it's like practicing in your bedroom. But he has got that discipline and artistic flair. He's such a young master at what he's doing. So it's brilliant. You both got on really well in that panto. You could tell you and Biggins and Max just really had a great time.
Yeah, no, it was really good, and as I say, it was great to work with him, great to see him. And he's a good vent. He's good. He's
technically outstanding. Yeah,
without forgetting the timing, but technically he's a good vent. It's great to have the youngsters coming to keep it going. You've got yourself and Zerdin and that, and to see the next generation still coming through is fantastic.
But it's fab, isn't it? And like comics as well. There's so many comics out there, and Live at the Apollo, and all these panel shows and stuff. I think you'd be great on a panel show, because you've got the natural wit and also the banter and the ad-libs. You ad-lib really well, so you could factor all that in. And it's a shame that they don't use us from other genres of comedy. It's kind of all everybody from Off the Curb. They get the slots.
It is really.
Is it something you'd love to do?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think there would be space for it. I think if anything, that's what kind of has disappointed me the most with television at the moment, how they kind of narrow things down into such a, when you look at these programs, they're working to an audience that doesn't really appeal to everybody that watches television. And I know you've got different shows for different people, but when you look at these panel shows and you look at, like the Live from Apollo, and I look at it and think it's fantastic for people our age or people, but what is my mum watching that's live stand up on television, or what is the older generation watching that is still live and on a stage?
They kind of pigeonhole comedians, don't they? So is it still mainstream and is it still alternative? It's kind of... I was listening to this thing. I'm really into my podcast, and I was listening to Evil Genius with Russ Kane, and he's got this show where he was talking about Bernard Manning, and is he evil or genius? And he's obviously talking about the racial aspect and what the subjects of Bernard Manning's material. But he went out and he performs like 10 gags to the audience to warm them up. And then he went into the show talking about Bernard Manning. And then the audience start turning on Bernard when you realise how destructive his material was to people, you know, and the subjects he picked on. And then he said, do you remember those gags I done at the beginning of the show when you all come down, sat down? I've recorded you all laughing at all these gags. They were all Bernard Manning gags, but they didn't know that. They were just laughing at Russ doing his thing. But it's kind of interesting that they were tricked into thinking they were Russ's gags and not Bernard's. But you're saying you don't like Bernard's material, but you laughed at every one of the gags that he did, and they were all Bernard's gags that I know and you would know. You know, so it's interesting. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that Rikki Jay could go on Buzzcocks or could go on these panel shows, Would I Lie to You, and deliver as much as some of the guests that they do get on there, you know, because it's what you do.
Yeah.
You're in that situation where you could handle it. It's frustrating, isn't it? Because we shouldn't have to explain ourselves.
I think that's where television... Somebody told me years ago that worked in television, when you think about when television started to change comedy-wise and programming-wise. And I think it was... If you think that... you take Coronation Street, for example, which the soap opera, which apparently soap's got its name from the fact that they used to advertise soap powder in the adverts of soap operas.
Right. Okay.
And the reason they advertised soap powder is because a soap opera appeals to every age group, and every age group needs to buy a soap. So that's where the soap opera allegedly gets its name from. So you take that and you take Coronation Street at the time that I'm talking about, probably had something like 13 million viewers or something like that. And at the same time, TFI Fridays came on with Chris Evans. And TFI Friday at the time had something like 2 million viewers or something like that. So it was far less than... And yet it was more expensive to have an advert in TFI Friday than it was to have an advert in Coronation Street, even though Coronation Street had maybe 10 times the viewers that TFI Friday. And the reason being was that TFI Friday appealed to a real small, narrow genre of people. It appealed to people from maybe 18 to 25 or 26 or maybe 30 or something like that.
Sure.
But of course, people like Levi's or Calvin Klein, all of these people, they were really keen to get their advertising, selective advertising, into that market. And I think when that happened, people started to say, right, we want these sort of programs on because we're going to get that type of audience, rather than putting something on that the whole family would watch on a Saturday night, or the whole family. I think we're not really interested, or television companies aren't so interested now on what the whole family's going to enjoy.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's a shame.
It is a shame, because it's like, I mean, they still have these talent competitions. You could mention BGT and X Factor, and they've got nowhere to go after that, you know. I mean, where do you go once you win it, you know? John Courtney won last year, and bless him, he done so well on the show. But where does he go now? Are they going to give him a TV series? Because that's what used to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And John Courtney would be perfect for a TV series, for somebody that can appeal to everybody, and it'd be ideal. But yeah, it is very, very difficult. And I don't think it's also age. I think regional as well. Everybody's really interested in what's happening in London and what have you. But once again, it's I think sometimes the television executives or the powers to be are a little bit blinkered in where they're looking. Yeah,
sure. And you're probably right about the different parts of the country as well. And as Ken Dodd always said, if you do a joke in Liverpool, people in Manchester won't laugh at it because they didn't hear it. I love that.
I love that joke.
Yeah, I do.
Eyes and Teeth.
Not every comic gets a chance to film their own DVD, but you've done Barefaced Cheek, and can people buy your DVD? This is you live at the Theatre Royal in Norwich. It's amazing to have that.
I think that was on a reel-to-reel, actually. I'm not sure if it was a DVD. I'm sure there's some copies out there in a bargain bin somewhere.
You need to revamp it. Or you're planning to do another one? Because you had such a varied career as well. You've done it all, and everyone should have a DVD at the end of it, and be proud of as well. So, I mean, you've worked for the troops. You've been in the Middle East, Ireland, Bosnia, Falkland Islands. You've worked nearly every audience, from pantomime, after dinner, corporate functions. It's not easy to come up with that. So you've got something to show for it. You've got the DVD. But it was done a while ago, was it? Do you need to do a new one? Is that what you're saying?
It was a great night, actually. Funny enough, Richard Gordon did the first half of it. It was a really good night.
But I'm really interested because I remember at the time seeing the posters and they looked amazing for the Warner Brothers Looney Tunes show that you did, and it went to the Palladium, and that looked amazing. You were hosting that.
That was a great thing. That was Warner Brothers Warner Brothers live events wanted to do some product placement over here, so they wanted to do a show that had animatronics or the Looney Tunes characters, but had a human in it, a bit like the Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Okay, yeah.
That sort of idea, and I was the Bob Hoskins, wasn't it? Or was it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was the Bob Hoskins. I was the live one. That was a great experience to do, and I went over to Los Angeles a few times from the back of it. In actual fact, for a while after it, I kind of moved over there for a year or two.
Yeah, I remember you being out there. I was speaking to someone, they went, "Oh yeah, Ricky's in LA now." Oh, yeah, Jack, not Luton Airport, Los Angeles, and it's like, it's amazing. So that must have been a great experience to be out there for a while.
It was a great experience, and I was really lucky that who I was working for at the time. So it meant that I had a good time while I was out there, and that's funny how things come about as well. If you go back about 5 or 10 years prior to that, I got a few gigs in the UK with Peter Simon again, and we would open the Warner Village cinemas. When they did a kids club, we would do the opening of it, and it was a great gig.
Wow.
They'd really look after us, and we'd go to the cinema, and they'd fill the theatres. Maybe there was, 8 theatres in the cinema, and they'd fill them, and Peter Simon and I and myself would go in, we'd have a few competitions with them and whatever, and then whilst the warm-up was in the one in front of us, and then we'd go to that one, go and do some stuff in there while the warm-up was in the next one, and we'd do all eight of the cinema, or however many screens there were in the cinema. And the guy that used to put it on was a guy called Peter Dobson, and he was working for Warner Village Cinemas, and it was great. Then 5 years later, or 10 years later, or however many years it was, probably 10 years later, and I find myself in Los Angeles working for Warner Brothers, doing this thing, and I'm in the lot there, and I bump into him, and it turns out that he was then the vice president of international relations or something for Warner. He was like this huge Charlie Big Bananas there.
Yeah.
And of course, we knew each other from years by, and he was a Brit out there, and I was a Brit out there, and all he wanted to do was have a British Sunday roast and everything on a Sunday. But of course, I had all of he had the box at all of the baseball and the box at the American football and everything else. So I had a really good time going out there. He's retired now, but so I was fortunate, and I shared a property over there with an actor called Christopher Casanova, who was in Dynasty, amongst other things. I mean, a really respected actor, and consequently, he had lots of friends,
contacts
out in Los Angeles because of his connections out there. So it meant that, and we shared an apartment for a little while, and it meant that there was some great parties to go to, and people that were far above my pay grade.
Amazing though to be part of that. I've heard it's quite an awful city as well. There's a lot of not nice stuff going on in LA. Did you see any of that side, or did you?
My wife hated it. She absolutely hated it. We had to make a decision. Christopher, bless him, he passed away, and at that point, then I had the apartment in Los Angeles, which I had with him, and the apartment in London, and I couldn't afford to keep both of them because Chris wasn't there. So I had to make a decision, and there was no way that Katie was going to let it be Los Angeles. No, the thing about LA is you've got to remember when you're there that it's a factory that everybody's there is there for one reason at all, and that's because they want to be in this business. And for example, if you're there on Thanksgiving, it's dead because everybody goes home to their friends, because nobody's born in it, what people are, but they travel there. They travel there because they want to be so. They've
got dreams, haven't they?
They're on a conveyor belt, and so And if you understand that, and if you let it go, look, that's why they're here. That's what they're here for. They're here to work. They're here because they want to achieve something. They're here because they want to make the dream come true. Then it's all right. But you've got to take it for what it is. And Katie she hated that. She wanted to go in like to a shoe shop and have somebody try on a pair of shoes, and the person that's trying on the shoes for her is actually there because she works in the shoe shop, not because she's got 3 films that she's lined up to do.
Yeah. It's mass competition, isn't it? It must be so difficult out there.
Yeah, and you know, and the whole there is a sense of falseness and everything else out there. But funny enough, the one thing that I found out there when I was there, that even though there's this huge competition, there's huge dog eat dog lifestyle that they say there is, I always found that everybody was really keen to help anybody out there. If you were an actor, I found people say, "Oh, have you tried this? Have you tried this agent? Have you well, you want to speak to him? Here's his number, whatever." I didn't find it the other way round, which you would expect, which is people holding their cards very close to their chest. I found it very helpful.
That's
I
nice.
kind of find that in the American way. I think in America, and another thing is that they're really good in America. They applaud success, and they like success, and they want people to be successful, and if somebody is successful, they're generally sort of pleased for them. And I think sometimes in the UK we have that the wrong way round.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? They don't always want it to work, or if you're going to be successful, then we'll pull you down once you get there.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a shame, celebrity these days. But just before we wrap up, Rikki, it's been brilliant talking to you, mate, and getting to know more about you. But can I just mention Cheeky Chuckles? Is that anything that is to do with you, isn't it, Cheeky Chuckles?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Was it on Twitter? Something.
It's a new little project that I'm working on that we're trying to get off. It's been a great thing to work on whilst we've been at home in lockdown, and it's a series of joke books and cartoons that Nick Page, who's another editor, whatever, is helping us on. And hopefully we hope it's getting somewhere. We're getting close, and we're keeping our fingers crossed.
I love it. Is that something people can look at now, or is it for a later date? Is it something we can?
It's for a later date at the moment.
Okay, brilliant. Let us know and we can share it. It'd be lovely to see all that.
I will. Yeah, no, definitely.
Oh, brilliant.
If it comes off, I'll be letting everybody know.
Good. That's what we need to hear. But Rikki, it's love to your family, mate. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
It's been yours. It's been great to catch up.
And you, mate. It's been a tricky year for us all, but we're hoping we can get back to it in the summer and kind of be normal again, if whatever normal is.
I know. I think we've forgotten it, haven't we? We've forgotten what normal is.
I know. And I hope to see you out there on the stage pretty soon. It'd be great to see you again.
And you, mate. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you, Rikki.
Cheers, mate.
Eyes Teeth.
Thanks to Rikki Jay for joining me. And if you want to see more of him, then he's on Twitter as @Rikki Jay. That's RIKKIJAY. Check out his website at www.rikkijay.com. Today's comedy quote comes from another British comedy talent who crossed the pond. It's James Corden. It's not lost on me. You know, what a privilege it is. You know, however shocked people may be that I am doing it, no one is more shocked than I am. People complain about James Corden, but he has worked to get where he is today. Good on you, James. Eyes Teeth is written, produced and hosted by Steve Hewlett, vocals by Nina, Lola and Larissa Hewlett, additional vocals by Rich T. The Eyes Teeth music and jingles are all produced and performed by Kevin Dean. Join me on the next edition of Eyes Teeth Season 7, Funny for Money, when I connect with award-winning stand-up comedian and MC Jim Grant.